All right, let's talk about two things you see on pretty much any construction site: scaffolds going up and excavations going down. You know, they're essential, but putting them together without knowing the rules, that can be a deadly combination. So today, we're going to break down exactly how to keep everyone safe. So, here's our mission today, plain and simple. We are going to tackle one of the most overlooked yet absolutely deadly hazards in our industry: setting up scaffolds way too close to the edge of an excavation. This is all about understanding the invisible forces at work right under your feet. Okay, before we dive into the danger zone, we have to lay down some ground rules. Let's make sure we're all on the same page with the basic terms. First up, the scaffold. We all know it, right? It's that temporary structure that lets us get our work done up high. But here's the key thing to remember. Its entire stability depends 100% on the ground it's built on. And then there's the excavation. Now, don't just picture some massive pipeline trench. OSHA is super clear on this. An excavation is any man-made cut in the ground. That small pit for a foundation, a little trench for utilities, they all count, and guess what? They all have unstable edges. So here's the million-dollar question. What actually happens when you put a heavy structure that needs a rock-solid foundation right next to a hole with weakened, unstable sides? Well, this is where the physics of soil can turn on you, and fast. Let's get right to the heart of the problem, understanding why the ground fails. This isn't some random act of nature. It's predictable. And if it's predictable, that means it's preventable. The big term you need to know here is surcharge load. See, that scaffold loaded with people and materials isn't just sitting there. It's actively pushing down, creating this huge surcharge load, adding a ton of pressure right next to that vulnerable edge of the trench. And that pressure creates something called the zone of influence, or ZOI. I want you to picture a straight line, starting from the very bottom of the trench, running up to the surface at about a 45-degree angle. Everything inside that line is a compromised wedge of soil, just waiting to break away. So putting a scaffold leg anywhere inside that zone of influence, well, you might as well be setting it up on a trapdoor. Seriously, you are putting all that weight on a piece of ground that has absolutely no support holding it up from the side. Let's make this real. Picture a crew doing some pipeline work. They need a scaffold to reach a valve, so they pop it up right near the edge of the trench. The ground looks fine, it feels solid, but it isn't. It's not stable enough to handle that concentrated load. And then, all of a sudden, that wedge of soil inside the zone of influence just lets go. The ground collapses, the scaffold, the worker on it, everything goes crashing down into the trench. It's not a slow crumble, it's a sudden, catastrophic failure. And the most important part of that story, it was completely 100% preventable. This wasn't bad luck, it was bad physics. The whole thing could have been avoided by simply maintaining the proper scaffold distance from the excavation edge. So how do we stay out of that danger zone? Let's talk about your setback strategy. There are crystal clear rules for this, and knowing them isn't optional, it's essential. Okay, this table right here is your guide. Now listen up, because this is important. A lot of people have heard of the OSHA 2-foot rule, but that rule is just for keeping your tools and the pile of dirt from falling back into the hole. It is not a structural safety distance for a scaffold. The real rule starts with the depth rule. Your setback distance has to be at least equal to the depth of the trench. If you've got a heavy, multi-level scaffold, you should be even safer and go with 1.5 times the depth. But hey, distance is only half the battle. You've got to know your ground. OSHA classifies soil into different types. You've got type A, like a dense clay, which is pretty stable. But then you have type C, think sand or loose gravel. That stuff is super unstable. For type C soil, that zone of influence is way bigger, so you need a much wider setback. Look, having rules on paper is one thing, but making sure they're followed on the job site, that's where the single most important person for this task comes in, the competent person. Now, an OSHA-designated competent person isn't just the guy who's been around the longest. They are specifically trying to spot these hazards, like a scaffold too close to an edge. And here's the critical part. They have the authority to stop the work and demand it be fixed, right then and there. What they say goes. And that person has a strict daily protocol. They have to inspect the entire setup, the excavation, the areas around it, all the safety systems, before every single work shift. And if there's a big rainstorm or anything that could change the ground conditions, they have to inspect it all over again. If a hazard is found, everyone is cleared out until it's made safe. No arguments. A safe scaffold always starts from the ground up with a solid foundation. Every single scaffold leg needs a base plate, and if you're on soil, that base plate absolutely must sit on a mud sill, a solid plank that spreads the load out. The softer the soil, the bigger your mud sill needs to be. And please, never ever use junk like loose bricks or cinder blocks as a foundation.
All right, we have covered a lot of critical ground. Let's do a quick mission debrief and lock in the key takeaways that are going to keep you safe out there.
Here it is, your mission critical checklist. 1. Always respect the zone of influence. Your minimum safe distance is the depth of the trench, period. 2. The 2-foot rule is for piles of dirt and tools, not for a scaffold. 3. Know your soil. Sandy, loose soil means you need more distance. And 4. A competent person has to inspect the site every single day. There are no exceptions to these rules. None. I'm gonna leave you with this. If something doesn't look right or it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Don't ever hesitate. It is always, always better to make a call for advice before something happens than for someone to have to make a call for an ambulance after. For more workplace safety training, OSHA awareness, and genuinely life-saving knowledge like this, make sure you subscribe to HSE Study. Stay safe out there and stay protected.